Hey guys, welcome back to HypnoVision for our last video of 2025. Wow, what a year it has been. Simply amazing. I want to thank everyone out there for your support, for your comments, your likes, and your shares. I have truly appreciated all of you. And at different points throughout this journey for me here on YouTube, there has been a different variety of people because of the wide range of topics. So I do appreciate each and every single one of you. This past year here on YouTube compared to the first 2 years has been completely different. The first year was very interesting. I was just wet behind the ears trying to find my way. And today I was looking at some voice memos from my phone that I had done right before I started. Here's a screenshot, by the way. Maybe I'll leave just a little taste of that at the end of the video if you are so inclined to stick around and listen. But here we are in 2025, just a few days away from 2026. And today's topic is going to be about the unaware, or the man who became self aware of his own patterns. Very, very interesting that my very first notebook that I wrote in the very first page was a man becoming aware of himself and the repeating patterns. And all over it, I had wrote repeating numbers like 333, 222, 444. And here we are coming full circle indeed. So guys, if you want to know, self-awareness is a form of superpower, but it is also a double-edged sword. And I'm going to break down a few things for you. So as we go into 2026, you have something that others don't, because some of the statistics on self-awareness will indeed surprise you. And without any further ado, let's hop right into this. The lack of self-awareness, signs, causes, and how to fix it. Self-awareness is an ability to recognize your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors and understand how they align with your values. This serves as a foundation for emotional intelligence, EIQ, healthy relationships, and fulfilling a beautiful life. Yet, despite its vital importance, most of us lack self awareness. Although many people are introspective, few actually have well developed sense of self awareness. But why exactly is this ability so challenging to cultivate? Let's find out. Very interesting. Why is this so hard to cultivate? I actually did create a shirt that said Cultivate Joy, and it has a beautiful hibiscus flower on it. Guys, it's no secret. HypnoWay is my brand. Yes, it might sound like a shameless plug if I can get it out, but there is a duality in my products, my brand, what it stands for. Anchor the feeling, for example, is something straight out of psychology, but there is also understanding how repeating thought patterns become like programming for our behavior and our actions and our emotions. So cultivating self-awareness is definitely something that takes practice. And it also takes the ability to become aware that, yes, sometimes that energy is coming from you. It is not someone else. It is coming from the internal self of I am. So with that, many people lack self awareness because they are afraid of making changes, being vulnerable, and facing their true selves. A lack of self awareness can be caused by culture of avoidance, the lack of role models, and the dependence of external validation. Self awareness can be cultivated through practices like journaling, seeking feedback from others, practicing mindfulness through meditation, and neurofeedback and reflective activities. Now, guys, I got to be honest with you. I've been very open on this channel. For some of you, you may be watching for the first time. For other people, maybe you've been following my journey. I have been very vulnerable on camera a couple times. I've allowed myself to cry. I've allowed myself to really express my inner state. I keep thinking about traveling on a highway when I hear that, because when you think about it, there's always like a northbound or a southbound or westbound, eastbound. but there is the inner state and then the outer state, meaning the internal feelings and emotions and thoughts contained within our body, but then there is everything else on the outside world. So it takes practice. First thing, you have to become aware of certain things, and that does indeed mean that you have to question yourself. You have to inquiry yourself. And for me, that meant asking tough questions. It was just 5 or 6 years ago, I was asking myself, am I a narcissist? Am I the narcissist? Do I have narcissistic traits? And yes, when you start to question yourself, because the first thing that most people do is they learn about something like that, for example, they learn what traits of narcissism are, and then they go around and they start to identify everything out there. Oh, that person's a narcissist. That's a narcissist. That's a narcissist. But no one ever really turns the finger and points to themselves and says, am I being a narcissist? Am I displaying traits right now that could be identified by someone out there looking at me and labeling me, identifying me as being a narcissist? So it does require a little bit of self reflection, which, if you've been watching, you would know that I've talked about Neville Goddard and reflective control of the internal state, which is when you become very aware. Now, where the awareness becomes a double edged sword is too much awareness can lead to hypervigilance. It can lead to things like reading every single micro expression of another person, trying to micro read every single thing. That can become a slippery slope of hypervigilance and then becoming too attuned to other people's emotions to the point that you take on, like a chameleon, that person's emotional state now becomes your emotional state, which in certain situations, like bonding with other people in relationships or close friendships and such, is not so much a bad thing. But if someone starts to become too much like a chameleon, meaning they have no self identity, they become like everything out there, they quickly change from one thing to another just to fit in and blend in, then that becomes unhealthy. Because when we start to lose who we are, we have no self identity. We don't know who we are. So I learned this through a teacher you may know of, Alan Watts, a spiritual teacher. I actually learned about a lot of this stuff because of the Kundalini teachings. He was a teacher of the Chinese Taoism, and understanding a lot of this stuff was really enlightening for me, which is why I'm even doing videos and continuing to do these videos. But the self awareness aspect of this is to understand that you can judge your thoughts without, well, let me rephrase that. It means to not judge your thoughts. I was going to say judge your thoughts without judging them, and that's a contradiction in itself. But what I mean is to slow down. Like, you have to slow down for self awareness, and then you have to practice it. And just like anything else, once you start to practice and practice, it becomes habitual, then it becomes habit, and then you don't have to practice as much. But the slippery slope in that is, what if a friend from 5 years ago that you used to be really tight with calls you up and you go hang out one day, and then all of a sudden, certain traits of you that you've kind of forgotten about have been pulled to the surface. Then you start cussing like a sailor. Then you start to do things that you haven't done in a long time. And before you know it, you've slipped into a pattern that you have long forgot about. That is a very real thing. It is very possible. So, guys, here's something that I will be honest with you right here on this camera. After a little over 3 years of being isolated, and yes, this was self isolation, this was a form of a man becoming self aware, a man that was on the beginning stages of practicing semen retention and celibacy, abstaining from sex, and really desexualizing my mind. So there was a period of really needing to just get away from the outside world, kind of come into my own space, reorganize my inner self, my inner thoughts, my inner emotions. I've done a whole lot of journaling and I still do write a lot, but not like I was in the beginning because I was so full of all of this inner conflict and confusion and what does this mean? What does that mean? But as things started to unfold, a lot of clarity started to come. But the point I want to make here is after 3 years, there is this sense of how do I make friends? How do I open that door back up to start to make friends again? Obviously, people can change. And obviously, that people have a version of you inside of their head that they've built inside of their imagination. There may be things that people think and perceive about you that is totally not true. Likewise, we can perceive things about others that we imagine or that we come to this perception of another person based upon a limited amount of information. So that is a thing that goes both ways, but it doesn't change the feeling of a extended amount of time of being isolated. Kind of honestly, it can give you some anxiety at the thought of reconnecting with people, more so with people from your past, because if you've done a lot of work to change on the inside, the last thing you want to do is go around someone that might drag you back into a old pattern, might pull you back into old emotions, might open old wounds that haven't fully healed. So with that, I just want to acknowledge it, but also share with you that it's very real to acknowledge that you have fears, to acknowledge that you have anxiety about things, but that is also a form of the nervous system speaking to you through signal. There is a saying that I heard a few years ago, and it's really stayed with me: signal, not noise. You see, noise can be a distraction, right? If you remember the old AM, FM radios, when you're traveling down the road on long distance trips, and you get to a point where your favorite radio station starts to get a lot of static. You're getting out of reach of that signal. And now that static starts to become noise. And that noise starts to interfere with the music. And the further you go, the more the static becomes. Eventually, you can't really hear the song anymore, only the noise. So, signal strength has a lot to do with this. The signals coming from the mind into the body and the responses from the nervous system back up is a form of signal. Now, when we get into distractions and time wasting, where we can procrastinate knowing that we should be doing something. Our nervous system is actually trying to send us a signal, but because our attention span is somewhere it shouldn't be, the noise is louder than the signal. We ignore the signal inside. Then that is when we start to go into that unawareness. So, unawareness is a lot of things that happen from the subconscious. These are repeating patterns, these are emotional patterns, thought patterns, and there is this link between thought and emotion that is like an unbroken chain, as Neville Goddard calls it. And it's very interesting that uh, we have what is known as cord cutting or emotional detachment from things. And when we start to realize through self awareness that this thought is a repeating thought that is really striking an emotional chord, and it can really start to cause us to disassociate from the present moment and drift off and start to relive that thought. And then we start to manifest those emotions in the body. We start to whip them up. And then we can quite literally relive that event over and over again. Now, there are many reasons why this could happen. There are a lot of variations to it. Someone could have PTSD, for example, which would be an extreme form of this. People who have gone to war, people who have been in very bad accidents, people who have lost loved ones at very strange times in their lives that really affect them internally. I recently saw where there was, I can't remember the name of it, but where two people have been together for a long time and one of them passes away, and not too long after that, the other one does. And what was conveyed during this video was that the nervous system gets very stimulated in the fight or flight side. It becomes overcharged to a point that it makes the person go into cardiac arrest. So our thoughts affect our emotions, and our emotions affect our thoughts, but it affects the nervous system and how that energy is flowing. The emotions is a form of energy in motion because the nervous system is firing neurons and little electrical impulses. And a lot of people never really think about it in a below the surface way. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at when it comes to self awareness. The ability to see yourself clearly, to understand thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and to acknowledge how they align or don't with your values and intentions. Intention is a very interesting thing because at the beginning of my journey, I wrote a list about 2 pages long of things that I intended to do and things that I intended to stop. And I would read it over and over and over to myself. Luckily enough, I have headphones and a lot of DJ gear and a lot of other audio gear. So putting headphones on, putting the mic in front of me and being able to speak into the mic and hear the live feedback, it had a profound effect on me that I didn't see coming, but I'm so glad that I did. It's not just knowing what you like or dislike. It's not just journaling your way through a hard day. It's the ongoing practice of being honest with yourself. Now, honesty, man, let me tell you about that because when you get honest, you can start to offend other people really quick because the moment of awareness is really a moment where you internally shift inside. And when that starts to happen, all of a sudden you question what your values and alignments are with things. And all of a sudden, if you become honest with something that's no longer in alignment with your core belief, then it's no longer in alignment with someone who you may have been a good close friend with. And that honesty can seem like something negative to them, like some kind of betrayal to them, because to them, you have switched up. To them, the version of you inside of their head no longer fits the mold. And to them, you are the one who has betrayed the friendship. But self honesty, much like self awareness, does have a double edged sword. Because when you start to get honest with yourself, you start to realize a lot of stuff about you. It's like learning and dating yourself. It's a new discovery within you of things that were always there, but perhaps you never faced them because of fear, because of anxiety, because of wanting to fit in with other people. It's very, very multi layered. Is being able to say, am I feeling defensive right now in the middle of an argument? It's noticing a pattern of procrastination and wondering, what am I avoiding? It's recognizing the version of you present to others that isn't always true. There are two types of self awareness: internal self awareness, how clearly you see your own values, passions, reactions, and impact. People with internal self awareness are happier and have happier, healthier relationships. External awareness, or how well you understand others that you see. People with external self awareness are better at emphasizing with others and accepting different perspectives. So, external self awareness in a way could be somewhat empathic, right? The ability to understand what someone else is feeling and to share that with that person. But the key to this is not to absorb that other person's feelings to the point that you take it on. I'll give you a good example. A friend is depressed. They are feeling very down and um, really depressed about themselves. You can understand how they feel. You can relate to why they feel that way, but you can't start to carry that person's emotional baggage and take it on as yourself. And we will get to that in just a minute and go down that rabbit hole. But there is that internal, external self awareness of, what are my emotions? What are my thoughts? What are your emotions? What are your thoughts? And I'm aware of the difference of the two. We can bond and share experiences with each other, but that does not mean that in order to be your friend, I always have to share the same feelings that you do as your dominant emotional state. And by that, I mean a baseline of your emotional state. That is your resting energy. If you're naturally a happy person, then your resting state is way up here in happiness. If you're naturally a depressed person, then you're always going to return to that baseline. That is what that means. Now, here's an interesting one. This is one that I gravitated to and actually have talked about quite a bit on this channel. To know thyself, these words were inscribed upon the temple of Apollo in Delphini in ancient Greek. It belongs to all men. It belongs to all men to know themselves and think well. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, Aristotle. To know thyself, and man shall know all the serendipity mysteries of the universe. That is when you gain that inner and outer awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and the world around you, and the imagination, and you start to cultivate that kingdom within, as Jesus said, internal kingdom of the four major chemicals. And check this out. Here's another four for you: the internal, the external, right? Of myself and the environment. But when you start to understand to know thyself, you also have the two hemispheres, left and right. So inner and outer, one and two, left and right, three and four. And then we have the forward and backwards, which is when people feel like they are dizzy, they get vertigo or vertigo. Very, 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 very interesting. Now, this from Carl Jung: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, those voice memos is very interesting because there was one of them, and I recall as soon as I heard it today, I was like, I remember the day that I wrote this, and I remember the day that I said it to a specific person. I used to say that the universe was fucking me. And that was a thought pattern. And to be honest, when I look back now, because I thought that way, because I acted that way, guess what I got from the universe? You got it. Being screwed in a lot of things. And that really goes to show how you can start to shift your life internally and start to change what you are attracting into your life. Because one of the things that comes with self awareness is magnetism. And magnetism is really, at the end of the day, when you cut through all of the noise and get straight to the signal, magnetism is the law of attraction because you attract what you feel, not what you think or what you are, until you inhabit internally that emotional state and feelings. You cannot attract something that is not in alignment with yourself. And that is very true, guys. When I discover who I am, I will be free. This came from Ralph Ellison. All these great historical figures and many more have already explained why self awareness is so important. It is the foundation of emotional intelligence, resilience, and better relationships. When we lack self awareness, we may react impulsively, repeat toxic relationship patterns without realizing why, stay in a job that drains us, sabotage opportunities, push others away, feel chronically misunderstood, and reinforce identities that do not align with who we really are. Can I get a zoom on that? Stay in a job that drains us, sabotage opportunities. And just seeing the word opportunity, the word association in my mind jumps to Neville Goddard. The most opportune moment is now. So when we have the self-awareness and something starts to really create resistance within the body, think about this word resistance and electrical energy, because we look at ohms, right? The resistance of electricity can be measured by ohms, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. But resistance, right, is like an emotional blockage. Think about this. If there's an inner thing with going on within our unconscious part of us, the unaware part of us, and it creates resistance, then it becomes an emotional blockage. And when we have emotional blockages, we throw our nervous system out of balance. And when our nervous system is out of balance, we can enter into fight or flight or into the rest and digest side of the nervous system, but it is completely out of balance and the energy can't really flow through the nervous system from the top all the way down to the root. Those chakra systems, these 7 chakra centers, which you really can't visibly see with the eye, is how that energy is flowing up and down the body. It is said that the heart itself has its own brain. There are different parts of the body that can really, it's not self aware, but it is divinely intelligent. You think about 50 to 60 trillion cells in the body, and they are all doing something. They all have a purpose. They are all working on your behalf, even growing your fingernails and growing your whiskers and your toenails, for example. There is some divine intelligence that is telling it when to grow, telling it when to die, telling it when to split and create new cells. There is so much going on inside of the human body. If one could just pull their attention away from the outside world and the surface level of things, they would find that kingdom and abundance within themselves and endless creativity and endless reasons to get up every single day and to find joy and peace. For me, it has become the sunrise every single day. The largest anchor in the universe, to be honest, because like this morning, the sun was just so huge. I mean, the angle of where the sun was at leaving for work this morning, it was magnificent. And for a few minutes on the way to work, I was watching the sun and there were some faint clouds that were kind of moving in front of it. And it looked like a little plasma ball that was going around the outside. Now, of course, I realized that the moisture and the particles in the air create a fractal like illusion and the rainbow effect. So I thought it was pretty cool, but also soaking in some of those serotonin, letting that go into my body and to start to lift my mood early in the morning. It's very true, guys. I've talked about this before, but those different hues that come from the sunrise and the sunset send a signal. There's that word again, signal, to the human body. It helps set the circadian rhythm internally, but it also helps our wake and sleep cycles. And it is very important to get enough sunlight every single day. It don't it doesn't take much. For me, 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, and this time of year with it being daylight savings time, it's hard to get a lot in afternoons, but I do enjoy that sunset because of that golden hue in the sky. Sometimes it's got this cotton candy look and this pinkish and purples and different colors in the sky. It's really magnificent. So, signs of lack of self awareness. When asked whether they are self aware, most people will answer yes. Now, this is the kicker. However, researchers from Harvard Business Review confirm that self awareness is actually a rare quality. Even, even though 95% of the research recipients believe they are self aware, only 10 to 15% of them actually were. Out of 95%, only 10 to 15% of those people were self aware. How can you tell if someone, including yourself, lacks self awareness? In the following sections, we discuss some signs to look for. This is where it gets interesting because I think at some point, every human being on this planet has done this at least once in their life. Some form of these different things I'm getting ready to read off. One of the most telling signs of low self awareness is a tendency to blame other people for your personal problems. Instead of taking responsibility for their actions, individuals with low self awareness typically shift the blame to others. This behavior not only hampers personal development, but it also strains relationships with family members and friends. Self aware individuals, on the other hand, engage in self reflection to understand their role in the problem and seek solutions. Practicing self compassion and empathy enhances their problem solving skills and strengthens social situations. If you or someone around you find yourself getting defensive or angry when receiving feedback, this is very important because some people can really dish it right, but when it comes to getting it in return, it is a big no-no. So, yes, this would be like the type of person who's highly opinionated about what everybody else should be doing with their life. But if someone were to hold a mirror up and show them their true self, it would shatter them into a thousand pieces because what they are doing is projecting themselves onto other people. And that highly opinionated state is really them. They are saying that this person over here or that person over here is this and that, but it's really them. And it's very interesting after self awareness, after you've been practicing and after you've been able to see within yourself a lot of things and you start to see it in others, it's like, wow, like, how do I tell this person that they are creating that problem within their own life? And if they stop doing it, the problem will go away. But how do I do it without offending them? Because, again, as this says, if someone starts to feel angry when receiving feedback, it might be a sign of low self-awareness. So the self-aware person has to be able to understand that the approach has to be well intended, it has to be thought out, and it really needs to be done in a way where you make the unaware person see it within themselves as if it were their own choice. Then it's like learning the lesson firsthand and it sticks with you. I've often told people that if I make a mistake that I don't ever want to make again, that first person lesson is always going to stick way harder than anything else. Someone can tell me 1,000 times not to do something, but until I do it and realize why I shouldn't have done it, I will never do it again because that first person lesson taught me something. Those who lack self awareness often view constructive criticism as a personal attack. It is not a personal attack, to be honest. It's calling out and identifying a behavior trait or a thought pattern or emotional pattern within another person. It's really not attacking the person, right? It's like saying that um, this person over here may do a lot of bad things, but they're not a bad person. Their behavior is bad. But if they can change the behavior, then they're still not a bad person, but now they are a better person. They could perceive this as a personal attack, a threat to their self perception rather than an opportunity for growth. This defensiveness can hinder productive conversations and prevent learning from others' perspectives. On the other hand, self awareness helps individuals view feedback as a great tool for growth and self reflection. The other thing that comes with this is poor emotional regulation and playing the victim. So, poor emotional regulation, where emotions instead of rational decision making dictate actions. This is where your emotions rule the roost. This is where we become reactive. This is where we become toxic. This is where we become like a nuclear reactor. And it is very, very helpful to start to understand when you start to observe your thoughts. Why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling this? And then to learn to breathe and allow yourself to shift out of it. And once you shift the emotions, it's going to change the thoughts. But as long as you're in that poor emotional regulation and you don't have the self awareness that you are the cause and you're feeling the effect, then it is impossible for you to change it. So, it is a clear indicator of low self awareness without the ability to identify and manage their emotions. Individuals may internalize negative feelings that lead to anger, resentment, and depression. I've talked about resentment before. Break the word down to resend, to resend, to resend the same emotional um, contagion, right? I want this person to understand how I feel, but they're not listening to me. So now I'm going to, why aren't you listening to me? I'm starting to get angry. This is what I'm talking about, the emotional regulation. If you watch my last video, I gave you a little disclaimer when I was getting into a very intense feeling that was very sentimental to me, and I felt myself wanting to cry. I allowed myself to vent it just a little bit, like popping the top and venting this steam instead of allowing that kettle to blow up, just letting off a little pressure allows me to maintain control and power through it, but also at the same time expressing that feeling so that others can feel it. People who are really good at acting and able to tap into characters and really evoke different emotions and feelings and convey that through the screen, and the audience can feel what that actor is experiencing through that character. Those people are really master of their emotions, and that is really important to understand here. Self-aware people can recognize how their emotions affect their behavior and how their behavior affects others. Playing the victim from a psychological perspective, seeing oneself as a perpetual victim in life's narrative is a strong sign of low self-awareness. Narrative. So here we go. I just talked about actors. Now we're talking about a narrative, a narration of a story. The story of stories is your internal self story of your life. You are playing the role of that character in that narration theatrically. When you master your emotions and you become self aware of that narration internally, you can start to change it, you can start to shift it, and you can play a different role in life. But with coming to that understanding of a different role, you have to understand that other people have assigned roles to you to play in their life that you may not even be aware of. And that is what I was saying earlier. If you change something within you that is no longer in alignment with a best friend or a coworker or anything, it could be religion, for example. All of a sudden, that role that other people have built of you, that version of you inside of their head, no longer fits. And that is something that you have to work through self awareness. Signs indicating a lack of self awareness. And this is, while the signs mentioned above are the most common ones, there are some other cues that could indicate this lack of self awareness. Impulsivity and difficulty making decisions, disregarding consequences, difficulty admitting that one's knowledge is limited. You know, guys, I don't take pride in the thought that I know everything. Now, I have learned a butt ton of stuff in the past 3 years, but I don't know everything. And that you know, being able to openly admit that is like a superpower because it takes the weight off of you from having to put that mask on and pretend that you know everything. And it's very interesting that some people have a limited amount of knowledge and it could be wrong. And you know, as I said earlier, when someone is given constructive criticism, it feels like a personal attack and they may start to defend something that they feel like they have an inner knowing about and it's very limited. So they might defend something that is completely incorrect and they defend it with such anger and vigorous emotion, but it's wrong. So take that with a grain of salt, but the ability to identify strengths and weaknesses within yourself is the road to self-awareness. The difficulty to put themselves in other people's shoes is one sign of a lack of self-awareness and avoiding self-reflection. So what causes this kind of stuff? You know, there's a lot of variations, honestly, because it could be the culture that you grew up in. You know, United States is known as the melting pot of the world. There's people from all over the world that live here from many different cultures, many different backgrounds, many different generations of families all live in the United States. So we all have had different upbringings. So therefore, there would be different variations of why a person may lack self awareness. However, they may be really self aware in one aspect and really lacking in another aspect. So, in the sense of like attracting a like, expanding the consciousness, or likes attracting the opposite to learn lessons, this is an opportunity where people with self awareness can learn from each other, grow from each other, and uplift each other. Now, going off of the heels of playing a victim, I wanted to really tap into this before I close this video out because, again, guys, this is the last video for 2025 for Hypnovision Studios. And this honestly comes full circle. How to spot someone playing the victim. Now, we all have done this at some point in our lives. Some people, um, it's temporary, right? It's just a particular situation that you may feel like you were done wrong in. And so there's this bit of I was forced into doing something that was against my will, so therefore I am a victim in this situation. Not saying it's a bad thing, but there is the understanding that long term, with a mindset of playing a victim with everything, is very, very unhealthy. Not all victims are manipulative. Feeling like a victim has taken on negative connotations, but there are people who play the victim in order to manipulate you. This is their favorite defense of narcissists and other personality disorders in people. In some other instances, this behavior is learned as a child. Yeah, because of the dynamics of the house, whether it's caregivers, whether it's directly with the parents, whether it is um, the difference in mom and dad. For example, you may get told no from mom, but then you go run to dad and then you play mom against dad. And then dad, because you're a little girl, you're my little princess, you're my little sweetheart. Of course, you can do that. So, this is a way that we train ourselves. We don't really know that we're being trained. We are learning a habit, we are learning a behavior. We learn that it's effective because mom told us no. We go right to dad. Dad tells us yes. We could flip this role around. We could call it a little boy going to dad. Dad says no. We run to mom. Mama's boy. Mama says yes. So, not to pick on anyone out there, just really highlighting how this dynamic works in the home, and the child learns these behaviors. And then as they become an adult, they see how this manipulation can work. And sometimes it's done unconsciously. So, again, you have to really be able to step back and kind of slow your thought process down when you are observing this with people and ask yourself, is this intentional? Is it unintentional? Can I address this without it feeling like a personal attack against them? But it is something that is a learned trait as a child. And it is something that we learn to get our needs met also. Sometimes it is conscious, but oftentimes it is more unconscious and automatic. Like most defense mechanism, codependents and empaths with a poor personal boundary are easily manipulated and can end up in lifelong narcissistic relationships or with someone who uses these tactics. And I just got hit with a wave of chills. I want to repeat this to everyone. If you're still watching and listening, this is very important. Codependents and empaths with poor personal boundaries are easily manipulated and can end up in long term narcissistic relationships or with someone else who uses these tactics. Empaths, let's talk about that for just a second. What is coming in my path? Now, I realize the spelling is E as the first letter, M-E-M path. But when I think about it, sight to sound, and I remove the sight and I just listen, empath, it is what is coming in my path. So empaths are really intuitive to what other people are feeling. So this dynamic is really highlighting poor boundaries. And poor boundaries is something that we learn as a child, right? To be hypersensitive, to walk on the eggshells because one parent, as long as you don't upset them, everything is fine. So you become so attuned to one or the other parents in the house to not offend, to not upset, to not rock them and get them angry with you. You are more attuned to them than you are attuned to you, and therefore you lack the boundaries of yourself. And when that happens, we grow up thinking that certain things that we were referred to as love in the home is not really love. We mistakenly think that this behavior means that this person is really passionate about us, they really love us. That is why they were upset. That is why they get angry, because I didn't do what I was supposed to do to make sure this person feels good, and therefore it is my fault that this person over here is upset and angry. Those boundaries, I resonated with that because, over the course of 3 years, I realized that when it came to women, I had poor boundaries. I love my mom. She taught me to always do my best to be respectful to women, but even my own mother would push against my boundaries as a child. And therefore, I grew up thinking that was normal with women. So, yes, that was something that I had to face within myself. I would often overgive to women to not really so much love bomb, but to try to win their love when all I had to do was really be myself, stand in my own power, and be who I am and not hide myself. In fact, one of those recordings on that voice memo was about me taking my mask off and shining my light, which the future has proven the past here, friends, because man, I stepped out in a big way on this channel, and I'm extremely grateful for all of you. So that does lead to codependency, where we are codependent on the emotions between each other. And, there is a difference in codependency and being interdependent, because one means that I don't have to have you to do what I'm doing or to achieve something in my life. But if we are interdependent, then I can ask for your help. You will show up and help me, and it is a equal give and take type thing. However, codependency can become like having a shadow attached to you, that little sidekick that goes with you everywhere, and you can't do anything without that person, or they can't do anything without you. They depend on you as an adult, which, if you are an adult, I don't know why you would want to have a life set up where you can't do anything by yourself. Interdependency to me is definitely the desired outcome, and something that setting your attentions for is really a good, healthy cause. They suffer from guilt and blame, hurt and resentment that their needs and feelings aren't being considered. That is really saying a selfish person who doesn't think about other people's emotions, or what they are doing, how it's going to affect someone else. So again, this is one of those things of trying to find balance, because if you are too sensitive to everyone else's feelings to the point that you lose your self-identity, and you are too attuned to emotions of others, that you don't know who you are, you don't know how you feel about things because you need someone else's advice to tell you how you feel, that is not good. But if you are so selfish and so blinded to how your own actions are affecting other people's, that's not good either. So you got to find that balance in between, where you have your personal boundaries, you can share with others, but you still have enough to pour into yourself and to keep your own cup full. Because if it is not full, then how can you pour into another person? Here are some signs that you are being played by an actor. Now, by an actor, it is saying someone playing the victim. They don't take responsibility. When we feel like a victim, we externalize the source of our pain. We are not accountable. Narcissists never want to take responsibility because it tarnishes their self image of perfection, which is really all about defense and hidden shame. Their self image of perfection. You know, I want to make this comment openly and honestly because there are certain things that through observation I've just come to like see it and I'm like, I don't know if I'm the only one that sees it, but in certain religious circles, there are some people that, that self-righteousness aspect of things, it's got to be tough sometimes to keep that mask on that I'm perfect. I don't do anything wrong and I can judge other people. But an honest person would recognize that behind that mask, there is a whole lot of insecurity. And so over the past 3 years, that's why I've become more and more and more open about the mistakes that I have made in my life and the lessons that they taught me because of becoming more self-honest. But there is those hidden blessings in these things. When we take them and stop avoiding the lesson that it was trying to teach us, those lessons become blessings. I don't need to be perfect anymore because I took my mask off. I am an imperfect human being. I make mistakes every single day, but I learn every single day. I grow every single day. I'm self aware, meaning that at the end of the day, I look at the mistakes I made and as Neville Goddard says, I back the day up in reverse. And whatever things that I wish I could change, then I know tomorrow that I'm not going to repeat certain patterns. And if I slip mentally and I repeat a pattern, I'm not so hard on myself. I don't start to self shame. Oh, I shouldn't have had that thought. I shouldn't have done this. This also, when it comes to responsibility, being able to apologize to people, man, this is a big one. There are some people, they will take it to the grave instead of giving an apology because giving an apology means that they have to admit both to the person they're apologizing to and to themselves that they were wrong. Sometimes the unaware aspects of things is becoming aware that how you treated someone was pure shit. It was just pure shit. And that person did not deserve to be treated the way that someone treated them. And an apology means they have to admit that they displayed bad behavior. But the identity part of this means that somehow it damages their self image, that they have to show that they're not perfect. And I don't know who wants to live that way. I don't. Like I make mistakes. I've done things and I am the kind of person that I will apologize to people. Number two, they try to shift the blame to you, anything to not take responsibility for their own mistakes or shortcomings. When you first meet a narcissist, notice if they blame other people. Soon you'll be on that same hit list. If they can make you feel guilty, they can gain power over you, which is what they want. They want to be able to dangle something over you, some form of guilt, some form of shame, some form of anything that gives them power over you. It's perceived power, by the way, not real power, perceived power. Abusive people do indeed end up with people who are empaths because the abusive person is not in control of their emotions. So, therefore, their emotions are ruling them and they don't make good decisions. They're very impulsive and, you know, they're codependent to the empath because the empath is where they emotionally dump all their negative energy to. And the empath, at some point, this is interesting, will go supernova. The empath, when they finally get to the point where they've had enough, this is it. I've taken all of the emotional abuse I can take. I've taken all of the mental games that I can take, and they go supernova. Then the super empath deploys every single lesson they learn from the narcissist and reflect it back to the narcissist. Look at this, guys. It's true. When the empath goes supernova, You better watch out if you're the one that triggered that cascade, because when the empath goes supernova, they know all of the tactics of the narcissist. They know all the emotional manipulation, and they have had enough. And they, boy, when it comes back to the narcissist, it is tenfold. Everything that the narcissist has done to that person blows up in their face. I'm not making it up, guys. So the bonus is that you relive their shame. You're not wait a minute. They try to gain power over you, which is what they want. The bonus is that you relive their shame. You are not responsible for other people's feelings, much less their actions or words. Let me remind you in this moment, you're not responsible for other people's feelings. The book by Neville Goddard, The Feeling is Secret. I just showed you guys, when you feel something that is in alignment with truth and clarity, you are speaking truth to power. You saw the goosebumps just then. So moving on, let's keep it trucking. Let's keep the energy up. They don't take in your care or compassion. They have to keep up the complaining and victimhood and acting for more attention, attention seeking. This is a form of pick me. Look at me. I need all of your attention on me, 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 me. They want power and attention more than sympathy. And a real victim will appreciate your concern. And it usually uplifts them and enables them to take self-directed action. So that's how, one of the ways you can tell if a person's like plain victim or if a person is really has been victimized by a situation. Because on the one hand, if you can offer a solution or offer just a sometimes people just need to be heard. Like just listening to a person, it makes them feel seen. And making somebody feel seen can mean the world to their life. You know, I actually said that to someone earlier this year. Sometimes people just need to be heard. It's weird, right? To be heard makes you feel seen. Makes me think about the story. I'm taking away one of your senses, and that was your eyes, because your eyes are the most dominant sensory input that we use. So listening to people sometimes is all it takes to make them feel seen. The person who plays victim doesn't really want to be heard. They just want to keep their self-image intact. They often try to get you to do something to fix their pain. This is a fool's errand, because even if you were able to, which you are not, by the way, they won't appreciate it. Their need for narcissistic supply is bottomless. Remember, they're invested in being the victim. They can't credit you for your success. They can't credit you. What kind of credit do you think that is, my friends? Emotional credit. And so if there is emotional credit, then you have to understand that there is emotional debt. This is what I mean when the empath goes supernova. There is an emotional debt that can no longer be met. There is no longer any supply for the narcissist to take. The empath goes supernova. There is this explosion. Check this out, guys. Boundaries, right? If we have weak boundaries, our boundaries are very small. We have a very small aura, a very small field around us. There is little room for self because our boundaries have been pushed in. And when we go supernova, we push our boundaries out. It's like an invisible field of aura, like the static electricity in the air. We can't see it, just like magnetism. We can't see the actual energy of magnetic fields, but we can see the influence. And I had a dream laying in my bed one night 3 years ago where it looked like the Merkaba, but it exploded. And it covered not just my house, not just my neighborhood, but it covered the whole town. And yes, it's very symbolic, not real, but the understanding was very clear that my boundaries were expanding, my consciousness was expanding, my magnetic field was expanding. And by magnetism, we also understand that's how we create free energy. This is how we pay off emotional debt and we enter into emotional credit to be able to have the energy to do something, because energy and emotions are really one and the same. They are solely focused on their problems and minimize or ignore your needs and feelings. What they want is nothing more than your attention. They need an audience to perform for. And they don't want to get sidetracked by focusing on you or their children. They're master manipulators. Often their manipulation is covert, meaning throwing rocks and hiding your hands. You know, that's like using fake profiles and things like that, fake numbers to play games with people, to try to emotionally trigger people and to, sit back and laugh and joke about it. That is being covert. Notice subtle put downs and how they defy avoiding answering questions about their behavior and shift responsibility for problems and your complaints. Playing the victim is the only one of many self defenses and tactics that abusers and narcissists use. There are many ways to manipulate, and you can learn how to spot them by educating yourself. Guys, this is it. 2025 is pretty much a wrap. And by educating yourself, I really want to point out that this whole experience here on YouTube has been one ongoing, educational, enlightening, conscious expanding experience for me. It is me against me in front of the camera every single time. And I'm so happy and grateful for all of you. I appreciate every single one of you. I know that there are people all across this world that have tuned in and watched my channel, but there are even people that I know firsthand that are silent watchers. And I want to recognize you. I want to acknowledge you, even if you are one of those people who have covertly done things behind the scenes. This video is probably for you. But it's done from love, and it's done from grace, and it's done from gratitude, not out of resentment, not out of hate, but simply enlightenment of fellow human beings. And with that said, guys, I will see you next year